Allora, buonasera e benvenuti a questo quarto appuntamento dei Development Webinars. Oggi sarà la volta del Corporate Procurement della Banca Mondiale e avremo due relatori di eccezione. Per conto sempre della Banca Mondiale abbiamo il Chief Procurement della Banca Mondiale, Cheung, e lo Specialist Procurement Officer, Faith Graham. L'intervento di oggi riguarderà esclusivamente il corporate procurement della Banca Mondiale. Facciamo una breve introduzione degli speaker, così diamo un'idea del programma e di come si svolgerà. Per il saluto introduttivo avremo Roberto Lovato dell'Ufficio Partenariato industriale Rapporti con gli Organismi Internazionali dell'Agenzia OICE, il cui intervento sarà seguito dall'ingegnere Antonio Martini, che è il consigliere per la cooperazione dell'OICE. A seguire avremo la presentazione di Mr. Cheung, che è il Chief of Corporate Procurement della World Bank, quindi riveste la posizione apicale di tutto il corporate procurement del gruppo Banca Mondiale, e quindi di tutte le sue diramazioni. Le conclusioni saranno poi affidate all'ingegner Scicolone, che è il presidente dell'OICE. Adesso, senza trattenermi ulteriormente, passerei la parola a Roberto Lovato per l'inizio dei saluti di introduzione. A te, Roberto. Il microfono, per piacere, è disattivato.
Ok.
Perfetto.
Buonasera a tutti e grazie della partecipazione a questo webinar che abbiamo organizzato insieme ad OICE relativo al procurement della Banca Mondiale e ringrazio tutti per la partecipazione ed in particolare OICE con cui diciamo rinnoviamo questa occasione di collaborazione e mi piace ricordare che da anni svolgiamo questa attività di collaborazione insieme con, diciamo, nel presentare l'attività di diversi organismi internazionali, in particolare le banche internazionali multilaterali di sviluppo. Ed è un settore nel quale OICE ha sviluppato negli ultimi anni un'intensa attività nella quale ha avuto anche la soddisfazione di poter vedersi attribuire ai propri associati diverse gare a livello internazionale in diverse istituzioni multilaterali. Quindi possiamo dire che in Italia OICE si pone come leader, sicuramente come associazione leader nel campo della partecipazione ai bandi di questi organismi internazionali e in particolare nel settore della consulenza e dell'ingegneria. E quindi fa particolarmente piacere constatare che in questo settore di eccellenza è assicurata la presenza degli professionisti italiani nell'ambito del contesto internazionale delle gare internazionali. E allo stesso tempo, diciamo, c'è da rilevare che abbiamo sempre organizzato insieme degli eventi in diretta sia in diverse parti d'Italia. Abbiamo girato l'Italia insieme illustrando l'attività delle diverse istituzioni internazionali per presentarli ai professionisti, agli studi di consulenza e di progettazione di tutta Italia. La circostanza della crisi sanitaria internazionale ci ha indotto, ci ha costretto, oserei dire, all'organizzazione di questi webinar che per noi sicuramente sono stati una scoperta, sono stati sicuramente uno strumento attraverso il quale diffondere ulteriormente la conoscenza e le opportunità di queste questi organismi internazionali all'interno del tessuto imprenditoriale italiano. E in questo ambito quindi abbiamo scoperto l'opportunità anche di diffondere sempre di più le opportunità offerte da questi organismi, anche perché le aziende italiane sono alla ricerca di nuove opportunità in diversi ambiti in tutto il mondo. Quindi possiamo dire che nell'ambito delle banche multilaterali di sviluppo, OICE abbia rappresentato per il settore imprenditoriale italiano un elemento di avanguardia, un elemento pionieristico alla scoperta delle opportunità offerte da questi organismi internazionali. E mi auguro che questo esempio possa essere seguito non solo da aziende di consulenza, studi di consulenza, ma anche da aziende che propongono i loro prodotti a queste istituzioni, ai progetti finanziati da queste istituzioni, in modo da inserire sempre di più, sempre meglio i prodotti italiani nell'ambito dei progetti internazionali di sviluppo. Quindi ecco, mi fa piacere pensare che OICE sia un po' l'apripista italiano verso queste nuove opportunità di business per le aziende italiane. E con questo auspicio e con la certezza che potremo avere sempre al nostro fianco OICE nella promozione dell'attività italiana a livello internazionale, passo la parola al dottor Martini, appunto, che introdurrà l'attività di OICE in questo settore e diciamo, proporrà il proprio indirizzo di saluto a tutti i partecipanti. Prego, dottor Martini. Ingegner Martini, prego.
Grazie. Thank you. And only a few words, because I know Kenny is leaving us in 1 hour, and so I'll be very short. But I want to really welcome Kenny Cheung, Chief Procurement of the World Bank, and Faith Graham, Senior Procurement Specialist of the World Bank. And thank you very much to ICE as well, which is the Italian Trade Agency, to its President Carlo Ferro, the General Manager Roberto Luongo, and to the Manager of the International Relationship, which is Roberto Lovato, who speaks just now, and to Bernard Prevete and Nadia Salem. They help us to organize this meeting. And thank you as well to Marco Ragusa of OICE for the activity he always does for the best result of the international development of OICE. In the World Bank is a very important client and it's a very good opportunity for the Italian companies. In 2011, the World Bank has sent letter of appointments for 1,150 contracts of consultancy for a total value of $1.5 billion. The Italian company has got the 2.7% of this amount, which is a very little amount, but much better than in the past, because we have to know that in 2011, we were in the ranking of the clients of the World Bank, we were at the 43rd position. In 2011, we were in the 8th position. But we have the capacity as Italian engineers and Italian architects to do much better. In Italy, this is for Kenny and Faith, We have 500 associated to our association. We produce 3 billion of euros of total invoice, and the 46% of it is done out of the Italian border. That's very important, I think, that you have in mind that our companies are absolutely ready to move out of our border and to serve in the best way with the best technical level World Bank and all the projects that World Bank has around the world. So, few words, but I think you have understood that we are very interested in the services for your bank. Today, we have about 100 CEOs of the Italian companies, which is the 25% of our association. It means that we are very interested. Last week, we had another meeting with Enzo De Laurentiis and June Brody about the World Bank, another sector of the World Bank. Now we are speaking about the corporate procurement of World Bank, and so I leave the speech to Kenny to tell us which opportunity can we have, and hopefully I hope to find him again in Italy, maybe after this coronavirus. And from now, I invite him and Fife to visit our country, to see our excellencies, to see our country, and to understand better from here what we can do for them. So thank you very much for you.
Okay, Kenny, the floor is yours. Just notice to everyone, I'll just tell them about the Q&A managing, how we will manage the Q&A. Per chi vuole, durante la presentazione di Kenny Cheung, che sta per arrivare, potete fare direttamente le vostre domande tramite la funzione Q&A su Zoom. Se ce le inviate durante la presentazione, mano a mano che avete delle domande, poi dopo le possiamo mettere a schermo e far rispondere Kenny, che ci dovrà lasciare verso le 17, 17 e un quarto. Quindi poi continuerà la sua assistente Faith con la presentazione, ci sarà un'altra sessione di domande e risposte alla fine della presentazione di Faith. Però durante la presentazione di Mr. Kenny Cheung siete invitati a inviare le vostre domande sulla Q&A. Kenny, the floor is yours and the screen is yours.
Wonderful. Well, buon pomeriggio. Hope you're well. Thanks for your time, and I'm very pleased to be here. Hopefully you can see me okay. I'll move a bit closer so it's a bit brighter. So thanks for the introduction and all the team that has been preparing for this. I really hope it will be a very informative session for you. As it was described, my colleague Enzo, who presented to you about the project procurement opportunities last week. Today we want to, Faith and myself will be going through the corporate procurement opportunity. So they are separate, and the corporate procurement is all about the opportunities to support the operations of the World Bank, not its clients, but the World Bank's own operation across the 140, 150 countries around the world. And you'll see how we will bear some of the details of what those opportunities are, and how you may be able to partake in part of that $2 billion US spend that we have per annum. We will have a presentation that we're going to go through, and so you don't have to worry about taking notes, and because that will also be, we're happy to send that to you, a copy of that for reference later. It's got various links to our resources and our website and so forth. And if you have any questions along the way, I will answer that at the end of the presentation. In terms of time, I will begin the first a third of the presentation, and then I'll open up for any particular questions to you, and then I'll get Faith to then continue with the rest of the presentation in case I need to cut out earlier for my next meeting. Okay, so thanks very much again for setting this up. So let me just try to share the screen and we'll take it from there. Okay, hopefully that's clear for all of you. And I'll also try to just make sure I can see some of you on the screen. Excellent. All right, so so what we are hoping to do is to be able to give you a bit of insights of how the World Bank spends money and in which area for the support of our operations as it relates to external spend, right? Through vendors, third parties, contractors, a very large outsourced community right across the globe. And my team essentially looks after all of that procurement process, the policy, the strategy, as well as the ongoing support in relation to vendor management and supply relationship management. So we are a full service procurement unit, about 80 of us, that is based in Washington, DC, as well as India. And we'll be setting up an office in the next 12 to 18 months, also in Sofia, Bulgaria, and as our third branch of the operation. So the presentation in front of you, which I'll begin by describing very briefly who the World Bank Group is. I'm not going to go into details because many of you are familiar with it, but also very familiar from Enzo's presentation. But I think why we're highlighting this is that my units essentially probably a bit different to what Enzo described to you, who is responsible for the project procurement under what we call the World Bank. And the World Bank are the two arms on the left. IBRD stands for International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and IDA, International Development Association. Whereas my team, Faith and myself and the rest of my team, are responsible for the corporate procurement needs across all 5 institutions of the World Bank Group, including the IFC, which is a very large part of the private sector arm. Sorry about this. MEGA, as well as ICSID. So when we talk about World Bank Group, that's what we mean, is the 5 groups, whereas the World Bank is only the first 2 arms. And this is important as we go through the rest of the presentation. First statement, I guess we see there is a connection between what we buy and how we procure to the mission of the World Bank, because we feel how we buy and what we buy is also important to make a change for the world. The World Bank is about solving poverty and alleviating that inequality. And so is how we procure with that same principle in mind. And therefore, every decision we make is very critical to be prudent, to be very high value for money, for high quality, but also it looks after the community at large in terms of the social and environmental impact of every purchasing decision that we make. And therefore, vendors and partners and companies like yourself will be a very important part of that vision and the partnership. And that's how we also select and evaluate in terms of that partnership and compatibility. So I mentioned briefly, there's about $2 billion US a year we spend across 140 odd offices. And this chart here just shows that how we divide our attention within my own team. So myself as the Chief of Procurement, we look after on the left-hand side a number of so-called, I would say what we call the back office function that looks after the vendor management, the processing, the policies and procedures, as well as technology and other infrastructure. And on the right-hand side, you can see 5 boxes there. These are the categories that we split our attention across to divide the spend of the $2 billion into 5 major categories, because we take a very much a client-centric approach as well as a category-focused approach as we come to buying decisions. And across all of the offices, as well as the 5 institutions, we look at category as a whole and we find the best synergy and the maximum buying power across those 5 category groups. So a little bit about what we do. Yeah, we guide the bank as well as all the staff in how they procure in terms of their requirements. We leverage what we call category management. Essentially, I've just spoken about how we reflect those in 5 different categories. We manage the systems, and we also oversee all of the administrative procurement requirements for the World Bank Group's ongoing business operations. So we are full service end-to-end a business unit. The core principle, these are very important, and even though many of them are self-explanatory, but it is important to share and highlight the focus that we have about transparency and equal opportunities, the value for money aspect, and also the qualification aspect is very, very important. And we focus on almost all of our activities. I think if I look at a high level statistic, over 90% of our activities or even higher are competitively bidded. So we do have some single source and sole source arrangement from time to time and for various reasons, but the majority of what we do is competitively bidded. Now, why is that important? It is important. It means that all of your, I guess your colleagues and constituents and within your country, I guess the context, all the opportunities, especially over $250,000 US, are advertised. And unless there's for a special security reason, that means there is no special channel that you need to go through to find out what's going on because they are public. And also that means that everybody would be given equal opportunities. It doesn't mean that you, just because you have not worked with the World Bank before, you won't get a chance. But it means that we welcome competition, and competition is our friend. And also competition means opportunities for everybody. And that's why we have so many vendors. For the $2 billion spend, we have over 34,000 vendors on our active vendor registry. And the reason is because we try to maximize the opportunity, whilst we balance the fact that sometimes we also wanted to get economies of scale, and therefore some of the relationships, we also focus on long-term relationships. So on top of the 5 categories before, now the 5 categories, if I'm breaking it down a little bit further on this slide, you can see how they are defined, right? So first of all, corporate services and real estate is a set of services to do with our corporate supports up to our office and facilities, including travel, but which is a very large component of our spend, but construction and facilities management, food and conferencing, security services, transportation, logistics, etc. So that's one bucket. And I'll show you what the split in terms of the spend is in that bucket out of the 2 billion. The second pillar here, which is also what the pillar that Faith Graham, who is the head of professional services, is responsible for. This is where all the consulting engagements, both administrative as also what we call operational consulting, comes into. And many of you are familiar with the tool called e-consulting too. And today we're going to go through a little bit deeper as to some of the tips of how best to navigate that to a lot of the opportunities in that pillar, on this pillar, on professional services, are channeled through e-consultant too. The third part is an area that is very core to the business of the World Bank as a financial institutions, are to do with all the financial services. That means all of the banks and investments, custody companies, for example, and other insurance and audit arrangement are falling under what we call financial services pillar. These also include a lot of the fintech and startups as well. That plays with the area of financial technology sectors. And so a very big aspect of our relationship. They're very core to our business. Our treasury our department is very much a large customer and user of these kind of services. The fourth pillar there is the human resources, very self-explanatory, to do with recruitment, agency training, employee benefits, health and safety, and so forth. And the last but not least is the information technology. And as you can understand, for a financial institution like the World Bank, which is effectively a technology company, because everything we rely on is so much IT focused, it covers all of the hardware, software, cloud, and other labor services and all into that. So these are the 5 broad categories, but this covers, I think, 99% of all the spend that we have within the World Bank. The only area that is not channeled through here through our team is some of the very, I guess, disparate external legal services. legal services are managed by legal itself and by the General Counsel. Okay, so I'll go to the last slide. I'm going to open up to questions and comments before I hand over to Faith. So this slide it shows the split of the 2 billion. As you can see, the largest bucket is in the corporate services and real estate area, followed by the professional and financial services group, and then the human resources and IT. Now, in the professional financial services group, out of that, there's a split, of course, between professional and financial services. The $2 billion is largely in the professional services in Faith area. And if you work out the math itself, out of the 1/3 of the spend of the 2 billion, which is about 700 million, about 400 or 500 million is through Faith area. So a very, very large portion, and many of that is in consulting services. And later when I finished, then when Faith goes over it, she will go for that detail a bit more. But before I hand over to Faith, this is the high-level overview, and let me open up for questions and from anybody on the floor. Thank you. Bernard and team, I'll back to you in terms of any questions and answers that anyone had. Do I use the chat box, or is it going to be verbal? Okay, so let me have a look at the Q&A. Okay, so the first question here we have is, how can we receive the same information that we receive on non-corporate service tenders, technical scores, commands, financial proposals? We appreciate the provision of a qualitative debriefing after the award, but we believe that also quantitative elements could help a lot in preparing for future winning proposals. So let me answer this first question. So in terms of the non-corporate service tender, if I can clarify, if it's to do with areas that are not in corporate procurements, I can't really comment on all the details in relation to what may be available, because Enzo's team looks after that. But as I mentioned, for the corporate part, the 2 billion spend, we have a standard procedure to advertise all the arrangements above $250,000 US. And in the advertisement itself, it contains all of the elements of the requirements, the terms of reference, as well as the criteria of our selection. And in many cases, we also include some of the budget's expectations as well. Now, in terms of debriefing, yes, we are open to provide debrief, but due to the confidentiality, sometimes the information we cannot review, but we can provide as much of that as possible. Faith will go into that a little bit more about some of the process after a tender. If you had not been successful to win award, why did you not I guess win the tender? Some of the information is available. So hopefully that answers the first question. Is there a second question? I saw there's 3 slides before.
Is there another question? Ci sono altre domande? Vediamo, let me check. There is just a clarification from the same gentleman, Enrico Esposito, which says non-corporate means the World Bank funded projects worldwide. It's just clarifying what he means by non-corporate. But I think we can go ahead while questions keep pouring in. We're just still at the beginning, and so there are not many questions. So if you would like to go ahead with the presentation, either you or Faith, we can gather more questions for the end.
So why don't we do that? Thanks, Bernard. I'll hand over to Faith now, and we'll continue with the sharing of the presentation to go into a bit deeper on our processes, but also specifically about opportunities that are available through e-consulting to do with administrative and operational consulting procurement. So with that, I'll hand over to Faith. Thanks, Faith.
So on the next slide here, we talk about targeting World Bank business opportunities. And as Kenny mentioned before, most of our solicitations are advertised because a good number of them fall above the $250,000 US limit that requires advertising. And for the operational consulting section, which falls under my team, the advertising threshold is actually 50,000 US. So everything over $50,000 gets advertised, except in some situations where we do a single source. And I think most of you would already be familiar with our business opportunities page on our website, which is shown through this link, which will send you this presentation, so you can always go there and look at what we have there. So the critical thing is that we want firms to participate in business opportunities where there is a fit between the capabilities that you bring and what we are looking for. So our typical solicitation process is that we have an expression of interest, which is advertised. We invite firms to participate in that expression of interest. Once we receive those expressions of interest, then we will do a shortlisting process. And so Kenny, we're seeing a different set of slides. Do you need me to share my screen?
Is that working now? I was just trying to get rid of my video. Yeah.
Okay, we're still on the previous slide. So if you move to the next slide. Right. So we typically issue a request for expression of interest through our website. And then once we receive those requests, those expressions of interest, then we have a panel that does a shortlisting. And one thing that I should point out here is that we tend to get a lot of response from firms. And so we've often had questions, why can't I get a debrief to tell me why I wasn't shortlisted? But that's administratively not possible for us, because sometimes we get like over 100 expressions of interest for a single solicitation. So we try to shortlist the firms that are the best fit based on the information that is provided. And so it's also important that the information that's provided is relevant. We then move on to the request for proposal with the shortlisted vendors. We have an evaluation panel, and then we move into the negotiation and award. So in the next slide, we look a little bit more specifically for the consulting service area. We typically use what we call a quality and cost-based selection method, where we have an assigned score for your technical proposal, and then we have a score for your financial proposal. And the way that we run our solicitations is that the team has to score your technical proposal before they have access to the financial proposal, because we don't want the technical scores to be prejudiced by having seen the pricing before. So once they've scored the technical proposals, then we open the financials. We do the calculations based on the pricing, and then we come up with the overall score. And as you know, for operational consulting requirements, we typically publish the budget. So everybody has an idea of what we're looking for in terms of the cost. And part of the reason why we started doing that was that sometimes firms would look at the terms of reference and they would have a conception as to what the scope and the nature of the work was. And that often was not commensurate with what the bank was expecting and the amount of money that we had budgeted. So that was the basis on which we then provided the budget. We do use single source from time to time if the teams can demonstrate that that provides best value for the bank. So for example, we do have situations where a vendor is the leader in a particular area. For example, say we want to do some sort of modeling, and there is a firm that has that model already developed, and so what we would be asking for is incremental work. We may single source with that firm rather than hire a new vendor who's then going to have to try to build a model from scratch. So that's a type of context within which we do single source. Or if there is some emergency situation on the ground, for example, during the current COVID-19 situation, we've done quite a number of single source because of the need to respond very quickly. The fact that people cannot travel, so quite often if a firm is already present in country, it's easier for them to deploy, or if they have resources on the ground, they can deploy those resources there. So those are some of the circumstances in which we do a single source. So then how do you prepare for a solicitation? Sometimes we do have pre-proposal conferences, and we definitely do allow for firms to ask for clarifications. And that is very important because we want to ensure that everybody is basing their proposals on similar assumptions. So if there is something that's not clear in the terms of reference, our preference is that you ask the questions up front rather than make an assumption, submit a proposal based on assumptions that may not be aligned with what the project team is looking for. We expect firms to address the specific requirements that we have. And we're often looking for specific experience. So experience that may be similar. If you think, okay, yeah, I can do this because I've done other work that's like this, you may get shortlisted, but once you are submitting your proposal, you have to demonstrate that you can do the work that we're asking for. We ask for firms to emphasize innovative solutions. So not just to regurgitate or to give us back what we have in our TORs, because unfortunately, sometimes we do get that, and that is not very helpful in terms of allowing firms to win the business. Because these are consulting services, the critical element here is the resources that you bring to the table. So the qualifications of the personnel who are proposed is of utmost importance, and their experience in the specific type of work that we're looking for somebody to assist us with, that's of critical importance. The availability of those personnel to support us throughout the project, those are some of the points that need to be emphasized. And basically the point is, if your proposal is competitive specifically from a technical perspective, also from a price perspective, then you're more likely to win. So if you move to the next slide, Kenny, we talk a little bit about our proposal evaluation process. So it's critical for proposals to arrive on time. We do have a system, and this system actually shuts down once the deadline is reached. So we always encourage firms, go online, not at the last minute, but give yourself time to make sure that you submit your proposal on time. We do have a help desk which supports firms that may be having technical issues or problems logging in, and we will assist you if you find that you're having a challenge. So as I mentioned before, typically we're doing a 70-30 split, but sometimes it can be different depending on the nature of the solicitation. And then on the next slide, we're looking at contract negotiation. So after we make an award, we will enter into negotiations with the selected firm. And we do share our terms and conditions upfront because we want all the firms to be aware of the basis on which we intend to contract with you, so that there are no surprises to you at the end. The project team will negotiate the business terms. So for example, the timing, the schedule, looking at the personnel and so on. But in terms of the legal contractual terms, corporate procurement is responsible for that. And it's important that if your firm wins, is advised through the system that you're being considered for award, that no work begins until you actually have a signed contract from us. So if I could just talk a little bit about some of the types of work that we do before I go on to the disclosure of contract awards. The types of work that we typically hire firms to support the bank on are in energy and environment, urban disaster risk management, health and education sector work, transport related services. We do a lot of surveys. With the COVID-19, there's a lot of work that's going on in the area of sanitation, water supply, and so on. The aim of this work is to help the bank's teams as they engage with our country clients. So the advice that you're giving here is to us. It's not to the government. In the cases where the government needs advice, they procure those services themselves under the loan or the grant which the bank gives to them. So we may also do things like capacity building, institutional capacity building for our clients. We develop global knowledge products. So those are some of the things that we do as corporate procurement. You'll notice that in the list that Kenny had put up front, among the things that it said we did was like legal advisory services, engineering advisory services. Those engineering advisory services quite often are done under IFC, which works very closely with government clients to develop, for example, PPP projects. So we may hire an engineering consultant to help with the design and development of that project. So after we've gone through the whole process, we've made our awards, we do disclose on our website the awards for contracts over $250,000. So that information you can find on the website. It gives a brief outline of the types of services that were requested. It tells you the name of the firm, it tells you the country that the firm is related to, and the amount. Okay, so let's look at our vendor eligibility. Anybody can participate in a bank business opportunity. You don't need to be a registered vendor, because we only actually register a firm when we get to the point where we want to award a contract to that firm. And our vendor eligibility requirements are available on our website. So in summary, the main eligibility requirements are that you have to have been in business for at least 1 year. You must have multiple clients or customers. The bank cannot be your sole client or even your major client, because then that puts both yourself and the bank at risk. Kenny, that's the next slide. No more than 20% of your revenue should be coming from World Bank Group business. Where there are business licenses that are required, then you're expected to have the appropriate licenses, and then we expect that you're going to accept our terms and conditions. So just to summarize, we like for firms to respond precisely to these technical specifications, ask for clarifications, submit bids on time. Important for you to assess the competition. So when we do our shortlisting, we do publish to all the shortlisted firms who the other firms are that are shortlisted. But even before we get to that point, when you look at a business opportunity, it's useful for you to assess, okay, is this my key area of expertise, or are there others who are more likely to be able to do this work? So that will help you to be selective in terms of what you participate in. And however, if you participate, do not be afraid that if you do not win this time, then somehow you are blacklisted or you're not reviewed positively the next time around. So you can visit our website for more details on our vendor eligibility policy, and also other information that we have there to help vendors. So we talk about risk, we talk about conflicts of interest, and just general information that would be useful in helping you respond to bank requirements. So that's the end of the formal presentation. And so if I could talk a little bit to the question that was raised earlier about the debrief. So we provide the qualitative debrief to firms because we believe that that is what should really be useful in helping you to understand what your strengths and weaknesses were on this last solicitation, and therefore what areas may you want to look at in terms of your next time around. The scores, you know, I think firms like to know where they fell in relation to others, but scoring in and of itself, especially when we have really competitive selections, the scoring doesn't give you too much additional information compared to what you get from the qualitative debrief, because that's where you should be told, for example, did you have the appropriate team members? Was there something that was deficient in your methodology? Did you propose a schedule that was not aligned with what the bank was looking for? So those are the pieces of information I think that will be most useful to firms in helping them to improve their approach and their proposals the next time around. So if there are any other questions, happy to respond to those.
Thank you, Faith.
Thanks, Faith. If so far, yeah, there are questions coming in. Before that, I have a question, if I may. So, because the World Bank introduced a couple of years ago a new procurement framework for the operational procurement. Does that new procurement framework also apply to corporate procurement? I mean, this new procurement framework put a great emphasis on the quality of the proposal. So it reduced the weight of price compared to the price of quality. And we just wanted to know if this new procurement framework also applies to corporate. Thank you.
Perhaps maybe I can answer that. To clarify, the new procurement framework for World Bank Finance Project is independent of the frameworks that are in corporate procurement. However, having that said, there are many parallels between the two, what we specify and also what's in the actual procurement framework, because we do work very closely in hand to make sure there is a level of consistency in the principles, especially of how we go about it. The procedures and processes may be different, but largely the aspect about value for money, the balance between risk and reward, the quality cost equation, as well as making sure the quality aspects of the submission, as Faith has highlighted, is very, very much consistent. So Faith, I'm not sure if you've got anything else to add to that.
Right. So the fact that we actually disclose the budget, I think is important, because basically, since everyone knows what price range we're looking for, then the critical thing is for firms then to give us a quality proposal. That's a differentiator, because what we do find is that with the disclosed budget, most firms come in at around the budget number, either just a little bit below it or a little bit above it. So that pricing then no longer becomes a differentiator. So it's critical that you have a quality proposal. But what we want to, the message that we also want to give to firms is that the cost is important to us. So we don't want you to ignore that pricing and value is of importance. And hence the reason why we typically have a 70-30 split. There are times when we do have a different split, sometimes 80-20. Very rarely do we do 90-10. Very rarely do we go below 70-30. But the aim is to have firms focus on both the technical as well as looking at the value proposition that you're giving us in terms of price.
Okay, thank you for your answer, both. We have another question now, which comes from Mr. Enrico Quagliano. How important it is to have a local partner in the country where the opportunity is addressed?
Okay, so I can take that one. So
okay.
it all depends on the nature of the assignment. Because for some assignments, some of the consulting assignments, for example, may involve a lot of research type work. But there are others that require on-the-ground activities. Having on-the-ground partners is important, because then, among other things, it's going to help to minimize your cost. It's going to minimize the amount of travel that you have to do. And the local partner often brings better knowledge and expertise in the situation that we're looking to address than bringing someone that is totally new to the city. You may be an expert in your field, but you may not be familiar with the specific circumstances. So based on the TOR, it would be good for the firm in each instance to assess whether having a partner on the ground is going to help to enhance your capabilities and your ability to win the contract. And there are a few occasions where the RFP will indicate that you're expected to have a local presence.
If I may also add to that, Faith and Bernard, in the coming few years, we are also we're going to be introducing additional framework where we are going to focus on the opportunity to give more opportunity to firms and vendors that may have a minority representation, a local representation, and in addition to what we have today, for example, of also women-owned businesses. These are all of our sustainable procurement activities that we try to drive. One of the three focus areas is the diversity of our vendor base. So therefore, break away from the myth that people say that if you're not a US-based firm, then you're going to have less opportunities. That's far from the truth. We're trying to emphasize and reinforce the importance of local content, for example.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. We were just wondering, while some questions still come in, if there is, we mentioned that we might see the, if we want to a little bit go on the eConsultant 2 platform. You mentioned that at the beginning. If, I don't know which one of you two would like to tell us a little bit more about it, or if you would like to showcase it on sharing the screen and tell us something about it.
Okay, so I can tell you about it. So the eConsultant 2 is the system that we use currently, where firms can go in and you can see our business opportunities advertised, and you can also participate. So let me see, I'm using my personal laptop, so it's not as easy to get to the eConsultant website right now. So, but let me see if I can actually go there and show you what it looks like.
Kenny Fate,
yes.
in the meanwhile, can I have a question as well from my side, Gabriele speaking, if so.
Sure, why don't we start with that whilst Faith is getting the eConsultant 2 up. Go for it, Gabriel.
Okay, so it's regarding the term and conditions. So I was reading the slide that Faith showed about the term and condition. If I well remember, you say term and condition are negotiated only by corporate procurement, which I can understand easily. And there was another sentence, business terms are negotiated by project team. And here I cannot see the limit of this, or where what is negotiated by project team and what by corporate procurement.
Okay, so when you submit your proposal, you would have set out what your methodology and your work plan would be. So quite often, as part of those negotiations, the project team will want to have alignment with you on the work plan, for example, the timing, who is doing what. You know, is your team top heavy, or do you not have enough of a particular type of expertise versus another type of expertise that you've proposed? Does the team feel, for example, that if it's something that needs you to be on the ground, that you've proposed 2 visits, but you need to do 3 or 4? If you have to do workshops with participants, to make sure that all of that is aligned. So that's the business aspect that the team would be negotiating with you.
Good, thank you, thank you.
Okay, so if I could show you what the eConsultant looks like. Okay, so this is what you would see if you type eConsultant 2 World Bank in your browser. So it takes you here, and on this screen, without logging in or having any sort of access, you can actually go into the business opportunities screen. You can see listed here all the open solicitations that we have. So you can look at it. For example, let me click on this one. It opens, it gives you some more information. It tells you when it was published, what's the expression of interest deadline, and it gives you a description. And then quite often we have a TOR that's attached. So you can click on that TOR so you can get some more details on on the scope of what we're looking for. It sets out here what the qualification criteria are. So it's important for firms to look at these qualification criteria and to make sure that you're proposing a team that meets those criteria. So at the expression of interest stage, you're not expected to submit a full proposal, but you're expected to submit enough information to give the team a level of satisfaction that, yes, you actually do have the capabilities to participate successfully in that business opportunity.
Okay, thank you. We also have another question coming in. If I'm sorry, I don't know if Faith, you want to continue or if you were completing.
Well, I think that's basically it. On the website, we also have, if you go back to the home, here are some resources where firms can get an overview of the system and how it works. And then there's guidance through how to log in and so on. We do post notices, as you can see right here at the top. Today is actually our fiscal year end, so we post notices so firms actually do know that the system is going to be unavailable for the next few days while we do our year-end closing. There's other notice here for firms if they're new users, in case they're having challenges right away, you have information as to what you can do or what you need to do to improve your access to the system. So it's very intuitive, and we do have a help desk, and that help desk is available not 24/7, but they're available about 18 hours per day. They do work Washington, D.C. time, but that team is there to answer any questions that you have at any point that you're trying to participate in a solicitation.
One question was, can we find these RFQ and RFPs also on the development business website?
Yes. So as a courtesy, we actually do also post on development business. But development business actually then directs you back to the eConsultant 2 website. So for firms, there are some firms we know who have a membership, I think is what it is, to development business. So you can go there and you can see all business opportunities across the development sector. So that's why we link into that website. But you always come back to our website if you want to express interest and to get all the details on the business opportunity.
We have another question from Mr. Carlo. Are small and micro local firms involved as local subcontractors in a World Bank project protected from bankruptcy risk in relation to the lead company of the joint venture? And what about the protection from bankruptcy risks regarding independent experts working for the lead company, like the team leader or key experts? I don't know who wants to answer this.
Okay, so I can take that one. So actually, our contract is with the lead firm. And we always make that very clear that we only transact with the firm that is the lead. Now, under our contracts, we expect that firm, if it has subcontractors or if it has partners, that it also fulfills any obligations to those parties. Unfortunately, we cannot intervene in any dispute or any problems that may arise between a lead firm and its subcontractor. But if information comes to our attention that there, for example, a firm has been paid by us and it hasn't paid the people who actually did the work, then we do inquire of the lead firm because that also in some ways could pose a reputational risk for the bank, but we do not intervene in the subcontract relationship between the parties. or between the firm and its personnel.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there are any other questions from maybe, I don't know, the panelists. I don't know if Gabriele has another question, or Mr. Martini, or even Marco. Or if Kenny has got some other thing to add. There is Gabriele now posing a question, Mr. Scicolone. Please, Gabriele.
Bernard, thank you. I was going to ask to Kenny or Fade if you can elaborate a little bit more on the engineering professional services you are buying for the corporate procurement. I mean, are you buying engineering expertise also on behalf of the development business? I mean, for example, to build or to develop the technical specification that will be used by the development business. So if you can elaborate for our companies a little bit more about what you actually buy in the professional expertise.
Okay, so it varies. So for example, we have our disaster risk management team, and that team works along with engineering firms often to do modeling on disaster risk and to help our teams to identify good practice solutions that we can introduce to our client countries. And then on the other hand, we have the IFC, which operates a little bit differently from the World Bank, because the IFC actually partners with governments to deliver solutions. Whereas the bank only does advice, IFC gets more involved on the ground in delivering solutions. So take, for example, we have a PPP project in Brazil to develop a rail network linking a remote city into a capital or some other major transport area. The government may ask IFC to assist them in developing that project. So in that regard, IFC then becomes almost like a consultant to the government. But we don't have all of that in-house expertise. So what we do, we hire an engineering firm, we hire a legal firm, we hire whatever other technical expertise is necessary to help us as the consultant to the government to develop that PPP project. So that's one of the key areas where we use these engineering services.
Yes, and I have a question as well. Do you have something like a database or a list of consultants that you can call when something urgent come on, or everything is done time by time with the tender?
So as we mentioned before, can you mention that most of what we do is competitively sourced, but we do have, based on our experience and the number of firms that we've worked with, and for example, if we have repetitive type requirements, then based on our prior experience, we may reach out to a firm to have them work directly on some project. However, we try to minimize that because we do not want teams to then say, okay, this one firm has the expertise because they've worked with us on this project in 10 other locations, so now we're going to work with them here. Because that exposes the bank to risk also, because then all of our dependence is going to be on that one firm. And that's why we advertise even if we have firms that have worked with us on similar requirements, have done very well, they need to compete again if they want to get the business. We don't want them to get into a complacent situation where they then don't give us the best value because they figure, you know, this is their work.
And just to add to that too, sometimes there are projects that have a long natural continuation nature of it, even though you may come to one phase of it, but due to the amount of knowledge that a vendor might have gained about a specific project, for example, that might go for 2 or 3 years, and they have a new phase that might go for another 2, then there are justification that we accept for sole sourcing.
Yeah, thank you. And can you give us a recommendation? So we said we have only the 2.7% of the appointments from the bank. Do you have any recommendation for us? So what can we do? We can tender more, that's sure. But is there something else that you think that would be useful, like to joint venture or what else?
I might start, and Faith can comment too. I think first of all, I mean, I'm just very pleased about the number of attendants. Right, I've got 55, participants I can see on this webinar. These are very important sessions, and we're happy to conduct more of this. So that's the first point. So you can have a wider reach. I think two other recommendations I have is that one is do not assume that's just because you have not worked for the World Bank or the World Bank process is very complicated, and therefore don't provide put your best foot forward, or don't even submit as again interest. If you do believe you have the capability, please go ahead and submit it, because we have many new vendors that we add on from time to time, and that competition pool changes all the time. Secondly, I guess the other recommendation, like Faith talked about, one of the most important part when you're submitting a proposal is a really good understanding of the terms of reference that is posted. Study that well. If there are questions, certainly that can be submitted, so that the proposal that you put forward is going to be given the best chance of winning by matching their needs. Often we have seen a lot of proposals that have a fairly loose and poor understanding of the terms of reference, and whatever has been put forward, therefore, it's not that appropriate. It doesn't matter how good the pricing is. So I think that would be my advice and recommendation. Faith, anything else you might want to add?
Right. So we do allow firms to collaborate in submitting their proposals. So even after we've done a shortlist, for example, part of the reason we publish the shortlist is so that firms can see who else has been shortlisted. And sometimes firms find that it's in their interest to shortlist with another, to submit alongside another shortlisted firm. So when the RFP is issued, it will tell you on the screen, it will say whether collaboration among shortlisted firms is allowed or not. If it's allowed, then you can use that approach if you think that's necessary to improve your competitiveness, or you can combine with other entities who are not on the shortlist so as to improve your competitiveness.
Another question has just come in. 1 second. So is it possible to have an idea of the average number of companies that apply for an expression of interest, roughly, from Mr. Enrico Quaglino?
I have another question, Bernard.
Sure. Let's get also the question from Marco Ragusa from OICE, so you can answer both. Go, Marco.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Kenny and Faith, for the useful tips. And I have 2 questions for you. The first one is the DG market okay for having bid opportunities as developing business? And the second one, can we have more information about the selection? And it is important for many of our OICE companies that have never participated to these opportunities. Thank you.
Faith, do you want to take that?
Okay, so the first question on the average number of companies that apply for an expression of interest. So actually, there, on average, I would say probably around 20 to 30. Sometimes the number is less, sometimes it's way more. So that's why we say it's important for you to look at the business opportunity and assess whether this is really your area of expertise and where you're likely to be competitive, rather than just, you know, applying for everything that's out there. And then the question on providing more information about selections, if I understood that clearly. So firms can
want to clarify? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
Marco, do you want to repeat your question also?
Yes, yes. So the first one is, did you market okay for having bid opportunities as development business and others? And the second one, just a few information about the selection, because I think that it's important for many of our associated companies that never participate to these opportunities.
Okay, so if I understand your question about the advertising on development business, so yes, we do automatically, whatever we advertise through eConsultant 2 gets pushed to the development business platform. So if you subscribe to development business, you can always see our business opportunities advertised there. And then from there, you would come back to our website to see all the details. So in terms of more information about the selection process, if that's what you're looking for firms who have never participated, on our website, we do have a fair bit of information there about doing business with the World Bank. We do have, as you saw on the eConsultant 2 website that I previewed, there is a link there that you can go to, and it gives you more information also. The selections that we do through eConsultant 2 are to assist the bank's project teams to advise those teams. So it's not primarily to advise the government. So it's advise our teams as they work with government clients. So it's not, the procurement that we are doing is not going to get you going into the field and working with a government or being involved in a huge project implementation activity. That's not what we do. That's on the other side, on where Enzo is responsible, and on that side it would be the government who would be running the procurement, not the bank.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is another question just came in for, I don't know if Faith or Kenny wants to answer. Several consultants here related to project preparation. Could you please touch upon the issue of conflict of interest with downstream opportunities? The obvious rule of thumb is if a firm worked on developing TOR will be excluded from the opportunity arising from that. What about, for example, a team member proposed for a downstream opportunity having worked on other aspects of the consultancy in the contract won in a corporate procurement?
So very good question. I'll start, and this actually often is a condition that we do pose, but there is no generalized rule. However, in most circumstances, if a consultant had been participating in the initial advice, scoping, or development of a TOR, then often there would be an exclusion from participation, the downstream. Now, having that said, there are exceptions, and that decision is done by a case-by-case basis. And Faith, would you agree to that?
Right, that's actually right, Kenny. The reason why there might be a restriction is that we don't want for any one firm to have an unfair competitive advantage. So if you worked on the TORs, for example, you worked with the project team, you know exactly what they're looking for, then you wouldn't be competing on the same basis as a firm who is going to see the TORs for the first time and probably have questions. So in many cases, we will exclude upfront a firm who has worked on the TORs from downstream work. There are cases where a firm may have some involvement in upstream, and we think that we can mitigate those risks, then we will say that in the initial TORs, and we will say that they may be allowed to participate downstream. But one critical thing is that we assess conflicts of interest at the particular point in time. So we don't give a prejudgment on the conflict of interest, because there may be an issue that comes up at the particular moment that we need to mitigate. So for example, hiring a bank staff who worked on a project to be on your team, that is not allowed. Your proposal may actually be disqualified. For example, say I work with the bank on this project, or I work with the bank in this project team. I leave, I come to you, and I help you to prepare your proposal for the same project that I was working on when I was at the bank. That's a clear conflict of interest, which could impact the ability of your proposal to qualify for award. And we do flag that in our firm eligibility questionnaire, so firms are aware that there are restrictions on bank staff, former bank staff, and you should be aware of that when you seek to hire any former bank staff to work on your projects or work on your proposals.
We have another one from Mr. Enrico Esposito. It's always about TOR. Optional, in case of optional TOR are not included, and the description of the assignment in the REOE is not very clear, would it be possible to ask more information in order to better understand whether the opportunity could be of real interest to us?
Okay, so at the REOI stage, actually, we do not have a clarification channel. So the only way that you could ask questions is by going to our help desk. So if there is real concern that the description is not clear enough, then you would have to send a note to the help desk, who can then reach out to the project team, and they may, in that event, update the request for expression of interest to provide clarificatory information. So unlike the RFP, where we do have a channel where you can go in, put in questions, and then we post answers, at the REOI phase, we don't have that option. So our expectation and our request of project teams is that they, as much as is possible, upload this draft TOR, and the TOR that you get at the REOI stage is a draft, just aimed to help you understand the requirements. So that's the approach that we use with our project teams.
Okay, there is one from Mr. Carlo Florio, who's an independent consultant, and it's always about TOR. Sometimes TOR are clearly outdated due to long time of appraisal, financing, and tendering preparation activities. Sometimes TOR are clearly wrong, such often in OPRC, road maintenance project, which are based on wrong assumptions of using wrong field data, which often are directly collected by the contracting road authority or by the beneficiary before the starting of the project. What is your suggestion to address these difficult cases?
All right, so this question may be more applicable to the project implementation side, which is where the government itself is running the project. However, from the corporate procurement side, what we do have in our RFP is an opportunity for firms to comment on the TORs. So whenever you you start preparing your proposal, there's a whole section that allows you to give any comments. If you see deficiencies, if you see things that probably won't work, if you see things that would need to be addressed differently than suggested in the TOR, that's your opportunity to set those things out, and then in preparing your methodology and your work plan to set out what the assumptions are and any additional clarifications that you think would improve the outcome of the assignment.
Okay, thank you, Faith, for all your answers, and thanks, Kenny. I don't know if anyone wants to add something or if there are any other questions from other panelists. So far, we are just within our time framework for the webinar. So if there are no other questions, I would gladly give the floor to Mr. Gabriele Scicolone for the conclusions of the webinar. Gabriele Scicolone, a voi il floor.
Okay, Bernard, thank you. So once again, Kenny and Faith, thank you very much for your for consecrating a bit of time today to our association and to our associated company, which are very keen to help as we can do with our skills and our competencies the corporate World Bank. So thank you once again for your open and transparent session of Q&A and good answers to our several questions. I see some of them maybe, as Faith you were underlining, are more appropriate for the project implementation downstream. But anyway, it's for us the chance to give you our question and get your feedback. So that's important. I learned today during this session. I learned that it's important to, if we want to have some chances or increase our chances to be awarded your tenders and the opportunity that come from them, is important to be, and so it is also the message I want to give to our associate, is to be selective and to really focus the tender we think we can really bring value to, as not to lose time in preparing bids for the sake of doing it, but having some chances to win. So it's very important. And also I was very impressed by one of the sentences in one of the slides. So a well-prepared bid can make a competitive proposal winning. So something similar I took from a slide. So just focalizing our associated company to be very accurate on preparing their bids and to be very focalized on the term of reference. That's what I understood. Of course, there are no magic points to be awarded tenders, but anyway, it's good to work in an environment that is very transparent and very positive. So I guess from our perspective, we need, so I learned last week with Enzo, through Enzo, and Antonio Martini also underlined this, that we, as Italian engineering companies and Italian consultancy companies, had a very important, impressive growth in being awarded opportunities with World Bank, ranking from the 43 position in the 2011, if I well I remember, up to the 8th position in the ranking now, which I see with, as Antonio was saying, is a very good stepping up, but it's not sufficient to us. We know that we have a very important engineering and architectural background in Italy that we want to put as a winning weapon for the World Bank to go abroad. And in this respect, I think that we can be very useful, very win-win for, I mean, our engineering companies for the corporate procurement, as we have our association and the Italian engineering company usually are not that big, the big names of engineering, but we have lots of small or medium-sized company with a very strong skill and competencies, which at a point can be very useful as consultants for the World Bank to design your technical specification or the preparation job for the downstream opportunity, where usually you need, and the World Bank need, very even important organization. So I think that anyway it was very good to attend both the presentation of Enzo for the downstream and implementation business, as well as today. So I hope that our associated company can be at your side as corporate activity. And as I said also last time, having the chance to speak also to my associate and our associated company, I want to remind that if we want to win, at least we have to participate. So just I want to remind our associated company to go in your website, select the project where they think they can bring value and participate, because that's the first chance to win. So thank you anyway, Tate and Kenny, and let me thanks also OICE for the collaboration in this set of webinars. It's one of the many dozens of things we do with OICE. It's always very important to us to have this partnership. So thank you, Bernard, and thank again to Carlo Ferro for the organization, co-organization.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Bernard. No, that's
Okay, thank you so much, Gabriele, and for the conclusions. And before saying goodbye, we just wanted to thank again our speakers and remind that Thursday there will be the final episode of the development webinars, and it will be an introduction to the IFC. So basically, we will have, for any one of you following, you might want to be looking at IFC roles in Africa. We will have a special guest, Paola Alaio. She's the country manager for Italy for the IFC, and her supervisor, who's Eusenio Nakuluma, he's the director for Western Europe of the IFC. So we will have a lot about investment in Africa and in Asia, South America. as many of you know, IFC is the global CMIST. It's the CMIST of the world, more or less, as to use a simplification. So you're more than welcome to join us for this webinar. And once again, let me leave you the contacts of OICE and ICE for any further information. You can contact Marco Ragusa in OICE. He's the reference point for all the international activities under the Ufficio Affari Internazionali, and for the Italian Trade Agency, you can contact me and Ufficio Partenariato under Mr. Roberto Lovato.